right, so our speaker today is one of one of my favorite speakers that we've ever had in the Speaker Series. I'm going to do a very brief introduction because he will talk a lot about his life story as part of his talk today. His name is Robbie Okuno. He graduated from the Colorado School of Mines with a degree in engineering. That is a very impressive university, and he'll talk about that in his talk today. He's been president of Worldwide Industries, where they specialize in direct sales. He's here in large part because he is the founder and president of Boss Fire Protection. He is also the CEO and founder of All Fire Associates. He's here with his daughter, Ashley Shepard, who is affiliated with All Fire Associates as...
She's actually the CEO.
You're the CEO.
He's the COO. I'm the CEO and CFO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen to nothing I say. So we're welcome. We're very glad to have both Robbie and Ashley with us today.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah, I'm really not Hawaiian. I was born in Laramie, Wyoming, but it sounded better. It sounded better than yeehaw, right? But I am definitely honored and excited to be here, and I want to thank Tyler and John Black for the opportunity for me to share my story. And like Tyler said, I own a fire protection company, and like most of you, you're probably thinking, well, what is fire protection? Well, it's really the equipment used to minimize the impact of fire on people and property. It's equipment like fire extinguishers, suppression systems, sprinklers, alarms, and we do the service and maintenance on that equipment. But growing up, I can't ever remember wanting to be a fireman or do anything fire related. As a matter of fact, growing up, I remember going fishing with my uncles and my dad. My Uncle Ted, he owned his own business, he owned a restaurant, and he had a nice boat. And I'm not talking about the $120,000 Mastercraft or Moomba. Back in the 1980s, a nice boat had a steering wheel and it had electric start. And my Uncle Dick, he was a doctor, he owned his own practice, and he had a really nice boat too. And they each had their Broncos and Blazers to back their boat trailers into the lake to launch their boats. And I remember me being a scrawny 10-year-old helping my dad get our aluminum boat off the top of our station wagon, carrying it down to the lake, and then my dad would get the motor out of the back of the station wagon, hook it up to the boat, and then 20 minutes to pull start it, we'd slowly put out to meet my uncles and their families at the fishing hole. But my dad passed away 13 years ago. I love him, but he didn't own his own business, and we didn't have a nice boat. He was actually an analytical chemist. He worked for the government for 31 years, retired, and then had to get another job to finish putting my younger brother through college. And so I think fishing with my uncles really kind of planted the seed that, you know, I wanted to own my own business. I wanted to be like my uncles. I wanted to be the guy signing the front of the check, not the guy signing the back. But all through high school and all through college, I don't think I even knew what an entrepreneur was. And I don't think I've ever had a college business class. And like Tyler says, mainly because I have an engineering degree. See, growing up in Denver, I applied to most of the universities in Colorado. So CU, CSU, UNC, I got accepted to all of them. I even had a couple small scholarships, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And I even had the opportunity to apply for a music scholarship at the University of Las Vegas, playing the trumpet. But the swim coach from the Colorado School of Mines, he contacted me. And the School of Mines is a big mining and petroleum engineering school. And I never even applied there because I didn't think I would get accepted. And last year, in 2021, the mining engineering department was ranked #1 by QS World Rankings. So like I said, I never applied. But the swim coach said that I was the only one that placed in state in the 100-yard breaststroke with a high enough ACT score to qualify to go to that school, and they needed a breaststroker. So I actually swam on a scholarship for 4 years, and in 1985, I graduated with a mining engineering degree. And I thought I had it made, because as a freshman, graduating seniors, they were getting multiple job offers. They were getting their choice of company cars. And as you know by the price at the gas pumps, the mining and petroleum industry is really up and down. So by the time I graduated, the mining industry was really down. And there was only a small percentage of graduates that actually got job offers in the mining field. So it was kind of like my start of real life classes, Real Life 101, going to a top-rated engineering school doesn't guarantee you a job. But I thought, no problem. My girlfriend got accepted to UCLA, so I would just move to California and get an aerospace engineering job, right? Mining engineering underground, aerospace. I don't know what I was thinking. I told my parents. They didn't know what I was thinking. And my dad said, Robbie, live at home, get a job, get some experience, save some money, and then explore your options. Well, that's really good advice. As a matter of fact, it's great advice. But I didn't listen. I packed up everything I had in my 1972 Datsun 240Z, those little two-seaters, and I moved to Los Angeles, California. Well, 100 resumes and a few interviews later, I had nothing. And engineering jobs, if I was applying for those, they were saying you needed 2 to 4 years experience. Well, how do you get the experience if you don't have the chance? So it's kind of like real life class again, no experience, no job. And the worst part was that I was running out of money. So I answered an ad in the paper, and back in the 80s, there was no Indeed, no Monster, there was no internet. So you waited for Sunday's newspaper, it was huge. And then I opened it and I started looking for jobs in the entry-level section. Well, I ended up on a day-long interview with a direct sales company selling pots and pans and novelty knickknacks out of the trunk of my car. So following that salesperson all day, going door to door, business to business, the only thing I was thinking in my mind is like, there is no way I'm gonna be doing this. There's just no way. Well, I qualified for the final interview. And in that interview, I told the interviewer that I'm going to quit when I get a real engineering job. And he was actually the owner, and he said, no problem, give it 2 weeks, give it 2 months. If you're not making enough money or moving ahead, then quit. But whatever you learn in terms of dealing with people, you'll use in this industry, the engineering field, or whatever endeavor you choose in life. And I said, well, can I think about it for a couple days? I went home, I looked in the paper again, I counted my money. I had a 20, a 10, a 5, and a 1 in my pocket. I had $36 to my name. I was going to get kicked out of a room I was renting from a cousin's friend at the end of the week. So it was either start selling stuff out of the trunk of my car or call my dad and say, oh, you're right. Well, I literally started selling products door to door. But see, here's the deal. The founders of that company, they were smart. They were genius. Because back in the 1980s, there was no internet. There was no Amazon, there was no Walmart. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to go shopping, you went to the malls. And all the products went from the manufacturer to the distributor, distributor to the wholesaler, wholesaler to the retailer, and the retailer out to the consumer. And everyone had their markup. Well, the founders of that company, they were working directly with the manufacturers to buy in bulk and distribute it straight to the consumer. So it was saving the consumers money. So something in the stores that was $40, we were selling for $10. The salespeople got the merchandise on consignment, so it didn't cost me anything, which was good because I didn't have anything. I got my goods in the morning, I'd go out and sell it, and what I didn't sell, I would turn in at the end of the day. And then I'd pay for what was sold. So it was all performance-based. I would get a product, I'd sell it for $10. It cost me $8, so I made a $2 profit. So if I could sell 50 items, then I literally make myself $100 profit in my pocket, which back in the 80s was a lot of money then. But the owner of the location, he was actually younger than me, I found out he would pay the founder or the supplier, the founder, $6 for the product. So he also made $2. So when I made myself $100 in the field, I made the company $100. So I did the math. If I get in a position where I had 10 guys working for me, making me $100 a day, that's a pretty easy way to make $1,000 a day. And in today's world, that could be like $2,000, $2,500 profit a day. So that kind of got me motivated about owning a distribution office. But there was a huge problem. I was this shy Asian kid. See, my mom and dad were born in California. They were born in the US. But when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor during World War II, they were both put in prison camps and internment camps. My dad was in Amache, Colorado. This is before they met each other and got married. My mom was in Topaz, Utah. My mom actually lost her dad at 13, and then she was in the internment camp when she was 14. And so 4 years, my parents were in separate internment camps. 4 years, barbed wire fence, armed guards, guard towers. They were very submissive. So I was raised to be quiet, study hard, get straight A's, and don't look people in the eye. Well, that's not great if you're in sales. But you have to realize that your dreams and desires have to be way bigger than your current circumstances or resources. They've got to be so big that they take logic out of the equation. Those dreams and desires have to be so big that they make you change. Well, Tony Robbins says that there's only two things that make people change: inspiration or desperation. And I was desperate. I had $36 in my pocket, and I was going to be kicked out of a room I was renting, and I had to change from a shy Asian kid to someone who could go out and sell. Fortunately, they had a 5 and 8 step system and this thing called the law of averages. Now, the trainer told me it's like a law. It's like the law of gravity. Well, my engineering mind said, well, I could tell you the mathematical equation for the law of gravity, and there's no such thing as the law of averages. And the trainer said, well, the law of averages simply means more equals more. The more no's you get, the more yeses you'll find. The more free throws, the more baskets. The more arrows you shoot at a target, the more chance you have of hitting the bullseye. And of course, we all know that you'll always miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? And here's something else. The law of averages works for everything. So girls and guys in this class, it even works for dating in college, right? I wish I would have known that. But sales, that was the hardest thing, because dealing with 200 to 300 people a day, we were talking to everybody. We were talking to secretaries, people walking across the street, people in the fast food drive-through and parking lots, and I got beat up. People were saying, no soliciting, can't you read, get out of here, I'm going to call security, get a real job, I'm not interested. Peddling merchandise is like door-to-door is like literally the bottom of the food chain of jobs. Because up here, right, you have pro athletes, movie stars, doctors, lawyers, video influencers, right? Then you have business professionals like engineers. Then you have hospitality, labor, fast food down here. And then way at the bottom, peddler. We were like the ugly guys trying to get a date. But we had a saying, we do things today that nobody else wants to do, so we can do things tomorrow that nobody else can afford to do. And they had systems for everything. Systems for sales, training, advancement. James Clear, he's the author of Atomic Habits. Has anyone read that book? Great book. He said there are goals and there are systems. Goals are about results you want to achieve, and systems are about the processes that lead to those results. So my goal was using their systems was to own my own distribution office and make a ton of money. And suddenly I was surrounded by people that wanted to run their own business. And it's like that saying, show me your friends, I'll show you where you're going. So my opportunity was to get good at the sales and marketing. I did. Build a team that could do the sales and marketing, and I did that too. And I brought part of my team from California, and I opened up my own office, my own business in Salt Lake City, Utah, all within 11 months. And when you get your office, the founders would supply you inventory on consignment. So there was never investment on inventory. So as an office owner, I had $80,000 to $300,000 worth of merchandise on consignment in my warehouse on any given week. My salespeople could build a team just like I did and open up their own location. I helped other people open up their own locations, which meant more buying power and distribution power for the supplier, the founders. And so my prices kept getting lower and the profits kept increasing. So after a few years, I had 7 cars at one time. I built a nice house. I bought a nice boat, right? And now by the mid-1990s, Amazon and Walmart were really starting to grow, like exponentially. But our supplier had grown too. I was one of 17,000 warehouses in 100 countries. So the supplier had huge buying power. We were working with big names like Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, Coleman, NASCAR, Samsonite, and sales were great. But by the early 2000s, our suppliers started going in different directions. We were taking teams of salespeople and putting them in Verizon kiosks in the Kmarts. They were taking teams of salespeople and putting them on traveling roadshows at Costco. We were doing credit card signups at Walmart, and I had teams of people selling internet and cell phone service door to door. And after 17 years in Salt Lake, Amazon and Walmart were huge. And you could literally buy anything anything, any of the products that we were selling, you could buy on the internet. And I didn't like the service industry direction, the direction the parent company was going. So because when you're selling internet or you're selling phone service for another company, for brand name, then it feels like my company was working for theirs. So I literally moved on. But one of our products we never sold in Salt Lake from the other industry, and it was really super unusual, were labor posters. Now, every business in Utah and in the US by law is required to have these labor postings in their place of business. Employees' rights, OSHA, job safety, medical leave act, equal rights opportunity, the minimum wage, just to name a few. And anyone owning a business or running a business in Utah years ago, we would get things in the mail, these mailers that said, open immediately, you could get fined $10,000 or you could go to prison. And these mailers were actually from these poster compliance companies that were charging hundreds of dollars for these posters. And the reality was that you could actually go to Utah Workforce Services or the Department of Labor and get them for free. But getting the right ones for the business and for your particular state was daunting. So I actually designed a poster with the proper state and federal postings, got ready to print, laminate, and sell it. But 2 weeks before we went to print, President Bush raised the federal minimum wage in 2007. It was the first time in 9 years. Now, Utah always follows the federal minimum wage, and it hadn't been changed in 9 years. So all of a sudden, every single business in Utah was going to need a new compliance poster, like every single business with the new minimum wage. So I made the changes in our poster, and in a matter of days, I had a finished product with the new federal and minimum wage going out the door. I printed the poster in Linden, Utah. I laminated it in Salt Lake. I had it sent down to Provo to get it cut, and it cost me $1.27. I got a couple sales guys that used to work for me selling products, and we sold those posters for $40. The salespeople got them for $20, so they made $20. And you couldn't even order them online yet, so it was super easy. So each guy could easily sell 50 of these a week, and again, I was making thousands of dollars per week. But I knew that the window of opportunity was going to close fast because of the competition. But what I really liked was the idea that legally, every business in Utah had to have these posted. And just like labor postings, every business needed fire extinguishers, and they also needed to be inspected every year. So as we're selling the posters, we started checking the fire extinguishers, and we found out that 30 to 40% of the businesses had expired fire extinguishers. I don't know if you noticed, but they have tags on. You'll see out here that they have a tag on it. Well, by state, federal, and local law, every fire extinguisher has to be inspected annually. So I had this idea. While selling the posters, we could find the expired fire extinguishers and sell the lead to an extinguisher company. And I tried to meet with several fire extinguisher companies, but it was only the largest and oldest fire protection company was actually the one that met with me. And I told the owner, I have compliance poster salespeople. We're finding a bunch of expired fire extinguishers. And as we're selling the compliance posters, we could sell the extinguisher service. And all they had to do, the fire extinguisher company, was do the actual service and then pay us a commission for finding the service. So it was really easy to sell to the fire extinguisher because it wouldn't cost them a dime until we found the extinguishers and they serviced them. And that owner, he was excited. As a matter of fact, he was too excited because walking down the steps from the second-story building, I was thinking to myself, well, I'll find the fire extinguishers, they service them, and then I make money for finding them. And then the following year, they'll service them again, and I make no money. So I decided on the last step down, the last step to the ground, basically 8 inches, that I was going to start my own fire protection company. And then I could immediately service the ones we found, and then continue to service those extinguishers year after year after year after year. Now, sometimes it's good to have this gift. It's called the gift of being naive, the gift of naivety, right? Innocently not knowing, because if you knew, you wouldn't even try. But remember, your dreams and desires have to be way bigger than your current circumstances or resources. They've got to be big enough to cause you to change, and so big that they take logic out of the equation. Because it's not logical to start a company that you know nothing about. The fire industry, I had never shot up a fire extinguisher before. It's not logical to start a company in 2008 in the middle of the Great Recession. It's not logical to start a company where you're going to compete against companies that have been around for decades, 40 and 60 years. And it's not logical to start a company that requires certification through the state fire marshal's office. And I quickly found out that the competition won't teach you. And it's years of school to get a fire degree. But it was even a better idea, because in the old industry, I didn't know how much money I was going to make every year. If we had Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, Coleman, NASCAR, those brand name items, it was good, versus Fix-It Tools, Gourmet Traditions, Woo-Poo-Poo keychains. My profit could vary even by $100,000 a year. But the fire industry could be very consistent, because what gets serviced this year needs to be serviced next year by law. But I still needed to learn the industry. So we had sold a poster to a business owner, and the labor posters, and he was really curious about the posters, and he wanted to buy them in bulk and actually resell them in the shop because he was getting them at such a cheap price. So he wanted to meet me. Well, his company, Universal Cylinder, they actually did the high pressure testing on gas cylinders like oxygen, nitrogen cylinders, CO2, and they did the hydrostatic testing and recharging on fire extinguishers. Mel Milgram, he's the owner's name, he was a retired state fire marshal for 16 years, and he used to oversee and regulate all the fire extinguisher companies in Utah. So I went into his business every day for weeks, bugging him to teach me the industry. And he's like, no, I've seen tons of people fail. No, you're competing against companies that have been around forever, for decades. No, there's too many state and fire certifications, and no, you're gonna come back with your tail between your legs. Well, one day, after about 3 weeks, I walked in there, and by then I got to know some of his employees. And one of them, Jaime, he said, hey, Robbie, Mel's firing his extinguisher technician. And I saw Mel talking to one of his guys in the corner, and then that guy went and took a seat in the lobby. And so I went running up to Mel and like, I know you fired that fire extinguisher tech, and in the past 3 weeks, I've seen lost cylinders, unhappy customers, you guys are unorganized. Like, teach me, I'll work for free, just teach me. I will help you get organized, I'll help you get caught up, I'll help you clean up, but I'll work for free. Mel looked at me, and he thought for a moment, and he said, well, go in the back and talk to Zach. So I went running in the back there. I studied and passed the state fire marshal's extinguisher technician exam in 3 weeks. So I got certified in 3 weeks. But certified does not mean qualified. I worked for free for 4 months. I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything right. Mel helped me get all the equipment together, and in June 2008, in the middle of the Great Recession, Boss Fire Protection was licensed through the Utah State Fire Marshal's Office, and I was a certified technician. But now I had a huge problem. I had no clients, and we were sold out of the labor posters. But I recognized a big problem. See, small business owners were busy. The extinguishers were the last thing on their mind. So when they needed service, they would have to call an extinguisher company. So other extinguisher companies, they actually wait for the phone to ring. So they actually might get a service clear up north, and then they'd have to dispatch a truck up there, and then they get a service clear down south and have to dispatch a truck there, and then way out in another county, they'd have to dispatch a truck over there. They're really busy. And then the following year, they're so busy, maybe with their Walmarts or Home Depots, the big businesses, that they don't have time to service the couple out of the way, and they forget them. And that's why 30 to 40% of the small businesses were never serviced. They were expired. And I could find expired extinguishers just going door to door, business to business. But I didn't want to be a one-man band, because I didn't want to be an extinguisher technician for life. See, if I got a real estate license, I wouldn't start listing houses. If I got licensed, I'd get a building with 6 desks, and then I would hire 6 realtors. So I actually got a couple guys that were selling the labor posters, and we started on State and 33rd. So this is State Street, this is 33rd. And I just started going door to door to door to door. And if I found 12 in this area up over here, and then I had another guy that was just going door to door, if he found 12 over here, across the street, and then I had a guy kitty corner, if he found 12 over here, now the following year, I got 36 reservices all within a 4-block area. And the reservices, we could just do those in a fraction of the time. What it took me to do in a week, I could do in a day. So the first 6 months, we signed and serviced over 3,000 brand new clients. And I did that using the systems that I learned from selling products. And then we really started recruiting. So I started hiring technicians, and we hired 20 technicians within a matter of weeks that were going business to business. Now, after I got BOSS licensed, I was in the state fire marshal's office like 2 to 3 times per week asking Oliver Moore, the state fire marshal, questions, because I just wanted to make sure that I was doing everything right. So a few months into recruiting, the state fire marshal started getting 60 to 80 calls a day, or 80 calls a day, or actually a week, 60 to 80 calls per week about BOSS fire protection. And they're asking the state fire marshal, is this a scam? Do I need this? Why is it costing money? Like, what's going on? And I had to explain to Oliver, the state fire marshal, why so many calls. We had 20 guys going business to business, and they were seeing 40 businesses a day. That's 800 a day times 5 days a week. It was 4,000 businesses per week. And a lot of them didn't know that they needed to be inspected and certified. So Oliver understood what we were doing because I would go visit him so often, so you need to be building those personal relationships with the right people paid off, and he dealt with his superiors. And we didn't hire experienced technicians. We developed sales technicians. And I taught them the system how to get new services, the cold calling. We hired guys that wanted to grow and progress and build something. And we had this vision, because it was easy to hire and develop people, that we wanted to be the biggest fire extinguisher company and expand all across the United States. Well, Garrett Gunnarsson, he actually spoke last year. Have you guys watched some of the other videos from previous years? No, you guys should do that. But he said something that was very profound to me. He said this: a vision is something you don't know how to accomplish. If you know how to accomplish it, it's a goal. The magic of the vision is you don't have to be the one that accomplishes it on your own. The vision is something you want to get other people excited about so they can start to contribute. Well, we wanted to be big. We just didn't know how to accomplish it yet. And other fire protection companies, the extinguisher companies, they got lazy. They got behind on servicing. So we took a lot of those expired accounts. Because it's easy when you're contacting 4,000 businesses per week. And then one day I walked in for my daily visit with Oliver, the state fire marshal, and he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Robbie, we had a meeting here yesterday with all the other fire protection companies." And I was thinking, like, well, why wasn't I invited? And he's like, "It's the first time in 16 years that I've been here that they got together on one issue, and that's BOSS." And I'm like, "What?" He said, "They are yelling so loud the secretaries in the front office could hear. They were complaining about all the business that you were taking from them. They were complaining about the equipment you were using." Well, with 20 technicians, I engineered a closed recovery system out of a 3-gallon water bottle. It's a closed recovery system that you need to use you have to have to service extinguishers. And normal closed recovery systems run about $1,500 per unit. Well, the one I engineered and made, ours cost us about $30. So I showed the water bottle unit to the state fire marshal before we used it, and he told me to get a patent. And in that meeting, all the other companies were complaining about the equipment, and then 20 minutes later in the meeting, they say that we weren't even using equipment, and the state fire marshal said they had no merit for anything they said in the meeting, and they were just being outworked. Well, the following week, my technicians were out, and all of a sudden they come back from doing the door-to-door stuff, and they're freaking out. They're like, "The competition started going door-to-door. We're in trouble. Everybody's doing what we're doing now." And I just laughed. Because you know what? 2 weeks later, Nothing. The competition didn't have the same mentality as Boss. Their techs couldn't do what we do. So after our first year, going into the second year, we were excited. All of a sudden we had reservices. So instead of, like, if I had an area with 400 reservices for the month, I could have easily given 4 guys 100 services each, and that would keep them busy. They'd make plenty of money. But I didn't do that. The 400 services, I gave them to 10 technicians. So each technician only had 40, and we got it done really fast with 10 technicians. But when you got done servicing, they would have to cold call. So they do their 40 and then have to continue to cold call. So because the pay was based on performance, we gave a percentage for the reservices from the previous year, and we paid double for new services. So people in the organization, they get paid only when they contribute to the bottom line, not for time and effort. You don't get paid just for walking around. So if you can only make money off the previous year's customer and not generate new services at double the commission, you quit because you weren't making enough money. So we did the weak people out. And we continue to grow and get new services. And every technician had the skill to generate new businesses. So if you could generate new business in Utah, you could do it anywhere. So that was really our fire extinguisher opportunity. Build a team, learn to run the business, and then you can open up your own fire extinguisher company anywhere. So we had people starting off as technicians that opened up Oklahoma and Arizona and Colorado and Texas and Oregon. And our technicians were the best. They never skipped corners. They never cheated on anything because they had an opportunity to run their own business, and they're teaching their people the same thing. And the new offices, they weren't named Boss Fire Protection. It was Pasco Fire Protection in Denver, Viper Fire Protection in Arizona, Boss Fire and Safety in Oregon, Nova Fire Protection in Houston, to name a few. We had the American dream. So that vision of becoming big that we didn't know how to accomplish at that time was now turning into a goal of being the biggest organization of independent fire extinguisher companies that could handle national accounts. Now, all of our offices needed extinguishers. They needed invoices, tags, tamper seals on a regular basis. But to run any kind of business, you still need accounting, people answering the phones, insurance. We have workers' comp, general liability insurance. Then they have insurance audits, payroll, recruiting, ongoing training. So our new vision was to have a support system for all the new extinguisher companies in our organization so that they would have a support system. But how? Well, my daughter Ashley, Tyler introduced her, Ashley Shepard, she actually had a 4-year scholarship here at SUU. And we came down, we were driving around, looking at some housing, and then she looked at me and said, "Dad," I'm like, "What?" "I want to defer." And she'll tell you that story too, but she deferred indefinitely. And a few years ago, she started All Fire Affiliates. And she worked with a programmer to develop the proprietary software that all our offices use today. And so at the close of my day for extinguisher, it literally takes 15 minutes for me to do everything. It figures out the sales, inventory, payroll, etc. It's all figured out electronically. All Fire Affiliates does all the accounting, payroll, insurance, workers' comp, GL again. They answer all the phones for all the locations, inventory reports, inventory, shipping, messaging, does the taxes for all the corporations at the end of the year. So our fire extinguisher owners in our organization can focus on what they are good at: sales and service, recruiting and developing people. So our original goal was to open up more offices, and we were doing that. But then, 2.5 years ago? COVID. We weren't going door to door anymore. None of the offices in our organization in other states were going door to door. But Boss, we started expanding laterally. When you go into a restaurant, there's a K-class extinguisher you just use on grease fires. It's specific to restaurants there. Restaurants have a suppression system. So they were asking us, "Hey, can you do our suppression system?" We're like, "Nope, have a nice day." And we had so many clients, so many people in the restaurant industry. We got certified and licensed through the State Fire Marshal's Office in suppression. As we're changing the feasible links out, we're giving them the greasy, nasty links to the business owner or the GM. and decision maker, and they're like, oh, can you clean our hoods? And we're like, nope, have a nice day. We had so many people asking for that we got into kitchen exhaust hood cleaning. And we're on track to do over $750,000 just in that division, and we're just getting started. And we have several techs now licensed and certified in sprinklers, alarms, for inspections and installs. So Boss has grown to be not just an extinguisher company, but to a full fire protection company. So now our vision now is to get all our extinguisher companies in the organization into sprinklers, alarms, suppression, to be a full fire protection company. And we don't know how we're going to accomplish it, right? It's kind of our vision, but as we continue to grow forward despite COVID, we have new ways of recruiting, onboarding, and most importantly, training and developing future fire protection owners. And I think the pandemic has changed people's mindset. There's a lot of people that got laid off, and there's uncertainties now, and people are scared, and people are trading freedom and the American dream for security and benefits. And the problem now is that we want people to make guarantees to us, but we're not willing to make guarantees to ourselves. And you have to be brave enough to blame yourself. And if you ask second graders, what do they want to be when they grow up? Ask any second grader. They're going to tell you, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be president of the United States. Like, they're huge dreams. I want to be a rock star, a video influencer, right? I want to be an NFL running back. I have the physique for that, right? Big dreams, but the real world starts telling you what? Well, you're not big enough. You're not smart enough. You don't have enough money, and you get beat down, and the dreams start getting smaller and smaller. And who are they blaming? Because today, I think we have to start believing in Santa Claus again. You got to get excited about what your dreams and desires are. And influence happens in a moment. The person that's most certain will always influence the other. And whatever your vision is, get excited about it, because the people will see your business or your vision through your eyes. But you have to start. It's that Nike thing, just do it. Because there's discipline versus regret. Regret is equated in tons. It's like, and discipline is in ounces. It's like the discipline is studying for the exam versus the regret of the consequences of not studying. And are you going to regret not following your dreams and desires? Because it might seem really hard now. The weight might seem unbearable, but it might feel like ounces when compared to the regret of not doing it. That's going to feel like tons. Because fear and doubt cannot reside in a man's mind alongside of faith. One will leave. You have to have faith in yourself. You have faith in what you're doing. Have faith in a vision. Have faith in other people. And faith in a higher power. And again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. I don't do a lot of speaking like this. I know the first time Tyler asked me to come speak at SUU would be the very first time I'd ever done that, so I don't do this very often, but I love sharing my business story, my journey. But I think we have another 10 minutes for questions. And if you guys have any questions for Ashley, my daughter too as well.
What is the most rewarding part of your job?
The most rewarding part of my job? I think, like when I said I didn't want to be a fire technician for life, to have to go out there and service it, and the following year go out and service it just to make money. It was to create and duplicate myself to leverage other people there. So in the fire industry, like during COVID, we stopped going door to door. I didn't have the 10 guys just giving them a handful of services to go out and cold call again. We had 4 guys and they were doing the 100 services, and they made good money doing that. But in the meantime, my daughter, she had created this proprietary software. It was all taken care of. We didn't meet in the mornings because we were scared of COVID. We didn't do anything. And so I sat at home. My technicians came to the office, got their stuff, and then they would go out and service it, take care of all the clients. In the meantime, I sat at home for almost like 2 years, making money. It was passive income. So the most rewarding part is building something that's going to continue to grow, that will happen over and over and over, because I knew the extinguishers that got serviced the previous year, we had to go back and reservice again. So next year, this year in 2022, I know approximately what I'll make from what we did in 2021. It's pretty consistent, and then we're going to continue to grow. And we're not just going door to door now. We've got school districts and we've got universities that we're talking to and some of the bigger stuff now, because we can not only just do their extinguishers, we can do their sprinklers and alarms and everything else. So yeah, so we're pretty excited about where we're going, but it is really rewarding. And I think, I guess the other part of that is that it's not just the passive income, it's to be able to create and help other people run their own fire protection companies so that they can buy their nice boats and take care of their family. We have a guy in, Dylan's in Portland. Sorry, Ashley knows everything. Portland, Oregon. He was only working part-time because he was a kind of a single dad, had part custody of his son, and spent a lot of time and said, I want to just focus on my son, growing up and taking care of it. And he called us a few weeks ago and said, I'm ready, I need to hire 10 guys this year. I want to continue to grow. I don't care what COVID's doing, we're going to continue to grow. So it's seeing other people having the same opportunity that I have.
So you said that you were a shy Asian kid. So as someone who's also a shy Asian kid, how do you put yourself out there to learn the skills that you need in order to be?
Well, like I said, there's only two things that are going to cause you to change, either inspiration or desperation. So when I had to go sell stuff out of the trunk of my car, hi, how are you? Did you get your whoop-poo-poo yet? What's a whoop-poo-poo? Whoop-poo-poo-poo, right? It's ridiculous. I was desperate. I had to sell that to be able to make money, to put food on the table, and to be able to have a roof over my head. So that's what caused me to change. And now it's not so much desperation anymore. I think it's inspiration. So I get inspired by so many things now. We have people coming in our organization, like Garrett Gunderson said, is get that vision and then have people contribute to it. It's not like you have to accomplish it on your own. That's the amazing part. So you have to ask yourself, you either put yourself where you're desperate and you got to change, right? Okay. Or be inspired by something. And same thing with dating. I was a shy Asian kid. I was desperate to start a family, so I got to go out and start asking, hey, what are you doing Friday night or whatever, right? Or inspired, wow, I could have this really good-looking wife because Asians are hot, right? It's whatever you tell yourself. If you say Asians are shy and they're whatever, that's the most powerful thing in the human nature, is to be who you define as yourself. That's a great question. Any other questions?
I was going to ask, so you mentioned that you opened a sales office in Salt Lake.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious, did you choose Salt Lake or were you assigned there? Was there some appeal for you moving to Utah?
It's funny that you asked that. I actually, so when I started in that other industry, they had expanded down from Canada. They were given the opportunity for these people to move wherever you wanted to do. California was all booked up. My girlfriend was still going to California. I never married her, by the way. But so because I was excited about my opportunity, so they said you could go anywhere in the United States. And about the only other state I'd been to was Cincinnati, Ohio. We played the band played up in there, and I'm like, I'm going to go to Cincinnati, Ohio. And we loaded up the cars, we got the inventory that we were starting off with, and we drove as far as we could, and we ended up in Salt Lake City. And then I started thinking wow, Cincinnati, that's really far, and I don't know. And so I called the head office and I said, there's no office here in Salt Lake. Can I open up here? And they're like, done. And that's how I ended up in Salt Lake. Sorry, that's a great question.
Yes, seems like you pivoted, not quickly, but from business to business to business, kind of just like you just did things. I was wondering if you could speak to the importance of being action oriented, and maybe also how you went about, I guess, assessing risk as you moved into each of these new endeavors.
Oh, I don't accept risks. It's like the gift of being naive. Because if you knew it's going to be that hard, you wouldn't do it. Sorry, that's probably everything that goes against every business class that's been taught. Assess the risk, and it's a mathematical equation for this. I didn't. But when you're saying pivot, there's that saying too that people create their own luck, and it's just going out there and doing it. Because there's sometimes that I look back and say man, I can't believe I went in and talked to the state fire marshals every single day. And I can't believe that I went and talked to Mel Milgram, this owner of Universal Cylinders. And there's a lot of things I look back and say, I can't believe I did that, or how did I do that? And it's just beyond me. But it was because you just go out and do it. Like I said, the Nike is just go out there and do it. Because there's a lot of people, that they don't start. My wife's going to get mad at me, but they analyze. They analyze. Have you ever looked at the word analyze? right? The first 4 letters is what? All right, so I draw kind of a butthole, whatever, right? And then Mindy's going to be so mad at me for this, right? And then eyes, analyze. And then the eyes is just kind of like, well, what are you doing? You're just kind of looking up. Yeah. So analyze, you just go for it. Sorry, any other questions?
Just imagine a better note to end on.
Okay.